There's a certain kind of man who walks into a room and changes the atmosphere, not because he's the loudest, the youngest, or the most charming, but because he's grounded. You can feel it in the way he carries himself, in the calm weight of his presence. Now, when that man is older and finds himself in the orbit of a younger woman, something interesting happens. It's a dynamic full of energy, attraction, and curiosity, but also full of tests. And here's the truth. Those tests aren't always obvious. They come in silences, in subtle shifts, in moments where you could either lose your center or prove it was never shaken. In this video, we're going to explore 9 powerful principles every older man should live by when navigating that space. Not tricks, not games, truths. Truths that keep you from losing yourself. Truths that make you unshakable in the face of attention, beauty, or temptation. And if this is your first time here, welcome. This is Stoic Outlook, where we talk about strength, clarity, and living with purpose in a world that often tries to pull you off course. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and let's dive in. 1. Never lose your mission for her. All right, let's talk about something most men don't realize until it's too late. Your mission. I want you to picture a ship out at sea on a moonless night. The waves are restless, the wind is shifting, and the captain has no compass. He doesn't know where he's going, only that he's moving. And that, my friend, is what a man without a mission looks like. Every gust of wind, every change in tide, every new distraction pulls him off course. Now maybe you've been there. You meet a woman who lights up your days, who makes you feel alive in ways you didn't think possible. She's beautiful, magnetic, maybe even younger, and she pulls you in like the moon pulls the tide. You start to shift your plans to fit hers, rearranging your priorities so you can answer every call, every text, every sudden "let's meet up." Before you know it, your compass, your mission, has been set down somewhere, and you can't remember the last time you checked it. That's the danger, because the moment you drift from your mission, you stop being the man who first caught her attention. Your discipline fades, your focus blurs, and you slowly become reactive instead of purposeful. And here's the hard truth. When you lose yourself for her, you lose her respect too. I've seen it happen to strong men, even men who thought they'd never bend. They start skipping the gym, pushing off their work, letting their vision slide, all in the name of love. But love without respect will hollow you out. A woman worth keeping will never want you to shrink your mission to fit her comfort. She'll admire the discipline that keeps you moving forward, even when it means less time together. She'll see the strength in your ability to say, "I can't tonight, I have work to do," and mean it. Because here's the paradox: when you hold to your mission, you actually become more magnetic. You're not a man drifting at the mercy of emotions. You're a man charting a course, and people, women included, are drawn to that kind of certainty. So I'll ask you this: if I took her out of the picture right now, what's left? Do you know where you're going? Can you still see the horizon you're aiming for? Or have you been sailing blind, hoping she'll be the one to steer? Your purpose is your anchor. Without it, you'll be tossed by every wave. Hold on to it, not just for her respect, but for your own. Because a man with a mission doesn't have to chase. The right things and the right people will find him on his way. 2. Don't be her backup plan or emotional filler. Let me paint you a picture. It's late on a Tuesday night. You're winding down. Maybe sipping coffee, maybe scrolling through something half distracted when your phone lights up. It's her. She hasn't messaged in days, maybe weeks. No explanation, no follow-up from the last conversation she left hanging. Just a casual, "Hey, what are you up to?" And maybe deep down, you already know why. She's not thinking about you when her life is full, when she's happy, when she's laughing with someone else. No, she thinks of you in the quiet moments when the excitement fades, when she's lonely, when someone else let her down. And for a second, it feels flattering. At least she's reaching out. You tell yourself. But here's the truth. You're not her choice. You're her backup plan. A Stoic man doesn't live as someone's emotional filler. He doesn't exist to plug the gaps in someone else's life, to keep them from feeling bored or unloved for an evening. That's not connection, that's convenience. And convenience is disposable. I've seen men give away years of their lives chasing women who only saw them as a safety net. They answered every late-night call, every just checking-in text, every invitation that came with no effort and no real investment on her part. And each time they told themselves it might turn into something more. But it never did. Because when you train someone to treat you like a backup, that's all you'll ever be in their eyes. The Stoic approach is simple. You assess the reality without bitterness. If you see that you're not a priority, you step away. Not loudly, not in anger, not to teach her a lesson. You simply remove yourself from the role you never agreed to play. You go back to your life, your mission, your people. And something remarkable happens when you do. You regain the self-respect you were quietly trading away. You remind yourself in the world that your time is valuable, that your presence has weight, and that you won't give it away to someone who only remembers you when it's convenient. So the next time that late-night text comes in after a week of silence, ask yourself, am I her choice or her spare tire? If the answer stings, that's good. Let it sting. Then step away. Because a man who knows his worth never waits in the wings, hoping for a spotlight that was never meant for him. 3. Don't chase her validation. I want you to imagine this. You meet a woman who lights up the room. She laughs at your jokes. She leans in when you talk. She seems genuinely interested. And suddenly, without even realizing it, your mind starts keeping score. Did she smile today? Did she text back quickly? Did she seem distant? Or was it just me? Before you know it, you're no longer living in your own world, you're orbiting hers. Every action, every word, every silence becomes a weather report. You check before deciding how you feel about yourself. Here's the thing. The moment you let her approval or her disapproval define your mood, you've handed over the keys to your peace. You've told her without words, you get to decide how much I'm worth today. And you may not say it out loud, but she feels it. Women are incredibly perceptive to the subtle energy shifts in a man. That silent approval seeking. It's invisible to you, but glaringly obvious to her. A Stoic man understands something most men don't. The need for validation is a quiet form of dependency. It's the emotional equivalent of leaning on someone just to stand upright. And the more you lean, the more you convince her that you can't stand on your own. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't value her opinion. We all want to be appreciated. But there's a vast difference between appreciating someone's affirmation and needing it to feel whole. The man rooted in self-worth moves forward with or without applause. He doesn't crumble when praise is absent, and he doesn't chase it when it's withheld. His compass isn't swayed by shifting winds because it's anchored in something deeper, his own sense of who he is. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing validation, you often get more of it. Why? Because nothing is more attractive than a man who isn't performing for approval, but simply living in his own strength. She can feel the difference between a man who needs her to clap for him and a man who's already walking tall without an audience. So ask yourself honestly, are you living your life, or are you auditioning for someone's affection? If you find yourself rehearsing lines, checking reactions, or adjusting your moves just to win points, it's time to step off that stage. A Stoic man doesn't perform. He doesn't beg for applause. He builds a life so steady, so rich in meaning, that even if no one's watching, it's still worth living. 4. Lead, don't impress. Let me tell you something. Most men get wrong. Women don't fall for a resume. You can list your achievements, your possessions, your trips, and your talents. You can recite every reason why you think you're worthy of her attention. But here's the truth. She won't remember half the details you're so eager to share. What she will remember is how you made her feel when she was with you. Think about that. It's not the number of miles you've run the cars you've owned or the titles on your business card that leave the deepest mark. It's the sense of safety she felt when you walked beside her. The quiet confidence in your eyes when you made a decision without hesitation. The way your presence filled the room, not because you were loud or flashy, but because you were grounded, calm, and certain. That's what lingers. The problem is, too many men are stuck in performance mode. They crack jokes they don't mean, buy things they can't afford, or tell stories just to look impressive. It's exhausting for them and for her. And here's the irony. The harder you try to prove you're enough, the more you communicate that you believe you're not. A Stoic man leads differently. He doesn't try to sell himself. He doesn't chase applause. He leads with action, calm, steady, and decisive. He shows his value without announcing it. If he opens the door, it's because it's in his nature, not because he's fishing for gratitude. If he makes a choice, it's because it's right, not because it'll earn points. And here's what happens when you lead. Instead of impress, you remove the pressure. You're no longer competing for attention. You're inviting trust. And trust is far more powerful than admiration, because admiration can fade. But trust deepens over time. So I'll ask you, are you performing for her? Or are you leading her? Are you stringing together moments to look good? Or are you simply living in a way that's worth following? When you stop trying to be enough and start being yourself. Rooted, decisive. Calm, you'll find you never need to advertise your value. It will speak for you long after you've left the room. 5. Stay present, don't project fantasies. I want you to imagine this. You meet someone who sparks something in you. A smile, a glance, a shared laugh, and suddenly, without even meaning to, your mind starts racing ahead. You picture the two of you on vacations, moving in together, maybe even building a life side by side. You start writing chapters in a story that hasn't even made it past page 1. This is what infatuation does. It takes a single moment and inflates it into a future. And while it feels exciting, it's also dangerous, because the more you invest in the story you've created in your head, the less you see what's actually in front of you. I've seen men get lost in these imagined futures. They start ignoring the present signs, the lack of effort, the red flags, the small ways she shows she's not on the same page. They don't notice the reality because they're too busy holding on to the fantasy. A Stoic man resists that pull. He knows connection isn't built in the daydreams of tomorrow, but in the truth of today. He stays rooted in the present, paying attention to what is real, not what he wishes was real. This doesn't mean you can't enjoy the excitement of a new connection. But excitement without awareness is a trap. You start making decisions not based on who she is, but on who you've decided she could be. And that gap between reality and expectation, that's where disappointment lives. So instead of projecting a fantasy, slow down. Live the moment you're in. Ask yourself, what has she actually shown you? How does she show up when things aren't perfect? How do you feel when you're with her? Not just when you're thinking about her. The Stoic man lives by what's real. He builds connection brick by brick in the present, with both feet on the ground. He doesn't skip chapters to get to the ending. He reads every page knowing that the story is only worth telling if it's true. Because here's the thing. When you stay present, you don't just protect yourself from heartbreak. You also give the connection its best chance to grow into something real. And that's far better than any fantasy. 6. Guard your emotional boundaries. I've met many good men with kind hearts, patient ears, and a willingness to be there when someone needs them. But I've also seen those same men slowly drained, not because they cared too much, but because they didn't know where to stop. You see, listening is a gift. It's one of the rarest currencies we can offer another person in a world where most are too busy talking. But when you move from listening to absorbing, when you start carrying someone else's storms inside your own chest, that gift turns into a slow poison. I want you to picture this. You're standing on a beach, and the ocean starts to get rough. The waves crash higher, the wind whips harder. If you're grounded, you can stand and watch the storm without being pulled in. But if you step too far into those waters, they will take you under. This is what emotional boundaries are for. Not to shut people out, but to protect your own peace while you're present for theirs. A Stoic man understands that he cannot control another person's storms. He can only control whether or not he walks into them. He can listen without becoming a sponge. He can care without becoming consumed. When a woman or anyone in your life comes to you in chaos, you don't have to match their energy. In fact, the more grounded you stay, the more they feel safe to let their own tension settle. You become an anchor, not a second storm. Ask yourself, when someone unloads on you, do you carry it for hours, days, maybe weeks? Do you lose sleep over what you can't fix? If so, you've allowed your boundaries to blur. The man who protects his emotional space doesn't love less. He loves more effectively, because his peace isn't fragile, it's steady. And from that steadiness, he can offer real support. So the next time you're invited into someone's storm, remember you can witness it without getting wet. You can care without carrying. And the stronger your own ground, the more you can help others find theirs. 7. Don't try to be her age. There's a quiet dignity in knowing who you are and staying there. Too many men, especially those drawn to younger women, make the mistake of thinking they have to become her age to keep her attention. They swap their style for something trendier, force slang into conversations, or chase the same nightlife she does, as if youth were a jacket they could slip back into. But here's the truth. What draws her to you in the first place is not your ability to mimic her world. It's the stability, the depth, and the self-possession that only time and experience can give. When you trade that for the illusion of youth, you lose the very thing that set you apart. I've seen it happen. A man in his 40s or 50s starts wearing the same sneakers as her friends, peppering his speech with words he doesn't even like, posting filtered selfies just to keep up. But instead of making him more attractive, It makes him blend into the crowd she already knows, boys pretending to be men. A Stoic man knows better. He understands that youth runs around in circles chasing novelty, while wisdom stands still, steady and certain. He doesn't compete with younger men on their field. He plays his own game on his own ground. Your season of life is not a handicap. It's your advantage. It's the reason you can sit in silence without feeling awkward. The reason you can make decisions without second-guessing, the reason you can lead without raising your voice. These are not traits you borrow. They're earned over years of showing up for life. So, stand tall in your season. Wear what makes you feel like you. Speak in your own rhythm. Live in the pace that comes from knowing exactly where you're going. You don't need to chase her energy. You need to anchor it. Because here's the truth. If she's drawn to you, it's because you're not like the rest. And if you try too hard to be like them, she'll forget why she noticed you in the first place. 8. Don't trade respect for access. I've seen it too many times. A man so afraid to lose a woman that he quietly swallows things he should never accept. A sharp comment here, a dismissive glance there, a promise broken without apology. And each time he tells himself, "It's not a big deal. I'll let it slide." But here's the problem. Every time you let it slide, you're not keeping the peace. You're teaching her how to treat you. You're telling her without saying a word, "My respect is optional if it means you'll stay." A Stoic man knows that respect is the foundation of any relationship worth having. And it's not a thing you beg for or negotiate. It's something you hold as non-negotiable. You either have it or there's no deal. Think about it. If you trade respect for access, what do you actually win? You might keep her in your life a little longer, but you'll lose the part of yourself that makes you worth staying for in the first place. I've seen men cling to a connection hoping that if they're patient enough, if they bend far enough, things will improve. But bending too far is just another way of breaking. And when you break, you can't lead. You can't protect. You can't inspire. The Stoic approach is different. You don't need to fight or raise your voice. You don't need to punish or withdraw to prove a point. You simply stand your ground calmly, but firmly. You show through action that while you value connection, you value self-respect more. Because the truth is, a woman may test your boundaries, but deep down, she's looking for a man who can hold them. Not out of stubbornness, but out of strength. And here's the paradox. When you refuse to trade respect for access, you might lose the woman, but you'll keep yourself. And the man who keeps himself will never truly be alone. 9. Never neglect your circle of brotherhood. Let me tell you something I've learned over decades of watching men fall and rise again. A man without a circle of strong men around him is like a fortress without walls. It might stand for a while, but when the storms come, it won't last. One of the most dangerous things that can happen, especially when you're caught up in the attention of a younger woman, is that you slowly, almost without noticing, drift away from your brothers. The men who used to challenge you, keep you honest, and remind you of who you are. It doesn't happen all at once. You start canceling the occasional dinner, skipping the weekend hike, letting messages go unanswered because you're busy. And before you know it, months have gone by since you've had a real conversation with the men who used to sharpen you. Here's the problem: when you isolate yourself, you don't just lose friendship. You lose perspective. You become more vulnerable to emotional dependence because you no longer have the voices that will call you out, the ones who will tell you when you're slipping, the ones who will pull you back to center when you're drifting. A Stoic man understands that brotherhood isn't a hobby, it's a necessity. These are the men who've seen you at your best and your worst, who know when to offer encouragement and when to give you a hard truth. They're the ones who can read the look on your face before you've said a word. I want you to think about this. If your entire emotional life depends on one woman's attention, what happens when that attention fades, shifts, or disappears without your brothers? You're left with nothing to lean on but your own fears and insecurities. That's when men start bending their values, chasing approval, or losing themselves entirely. But when you keep your circle strong, something powerful happens. You stop putting all your emotional weight on one relationship. You maintain balance. You remember that your life is bigger than romance. It's about purpose, growth, and the men who walk alongside you in that mission. Some of the most grounded men I know still meet weekly with their closest friends. They talk about business, about family, about faith, about the challenges they're facing. They push each other to do better, and they remind each other of the bigger picture. That's how you stay sharp. That's how you avoid drifting into the fog of emotional dependency. And let's be clear, this isn't about ignoring the woman in your life. It's about making sure she's part of a rich, full existence, not the center of it. When she sees you respected by other men, held accountable by your peers, and connected to a brotherhood that challenges you, her respect for you grows. So guard those bonds fiercely. Don't let infatuation make you forget the men who stood beside you long before she arrived. Because when you lose your brotherhood, you lose more than friends. You lose the iron that keeps your spirit sharp. And a dull blade cuts nothing, not even through the illusions that life will throw your way. Here's the truth, being an older man around a younger woman is not a handicap. It's a responsibility. It's an invitation to live with even greater clarity, because your years have given you what she does not yet have: perspective. And perspective is power. The temptation, of course, is to slip into chasing, to start performing, proving, bending, just to keep her attention. But the moment you do that, you lose the very essence that made her curious about you in the first place. A Stoic man doesn't measure his worth by her reactions, her replies, or her approval. Instead, he asks a simple question: does this align with my life? If it does, he steps forward. If it doesn't, he steps back. No drama, no resentment, no begging for what was never meant to be his. Your mission, your values, your inner peace, these are not negotiable. You do not trade them for attention, no matter how beautiful or exciting it may seem in the moment. Because women, especially younger women, are drawn to the man who stands firm, who doesn't get lost in her orbit, who keeps moving with or without her. So remember this: your presence is not a performance, it's a statement. When you carry yourself with calm strength, you don't have to convince anyone of your worth. It speaks for itself. And if you truly want to honor yourself and her, don't lose yourself in the pursuit. Stand grounded in who you are, and let every connection grow from that foundation. That is the Stoic way. At the end of the day, these 9 principles aren't just about women. They're about you. They're about living with purpose, protecting your boundaries, and refusing to hand over your power. When you stand firm in your mission, lead with calm confidence, and keep your circle strong, you create a life that no one can take from you. Subscribe to Stoic Outlook so you never miss the deeper conversations we have here. Like this video. If it resonated with you, share it with a friend who needs to hear this, and leave a comment below so we can keep exploring these truths together. This is just the beginning. In the next video, we'll go even deeper into the mindset that allows a man to stay unshaken no matter who enters or leaves his life. Until then, stand firm, live well, and never lose yourself.